we are live from America and just outside the Matrix. It is time, once again, for the show that brings you the truth behind the headlines, as we've been doing for months now. I'm just saying, because it's Invasion Day, and there's no invasion, as we told you. I'm investigative journalist Lee Stranahan. This is The Backstory. And let me ask our multifaceted engineer, Saul, do we have Carter on? Did I hear that?
No, we don't have any guest hosts.
There's no guest host today, right?
I got to get set up.
Wait, okay, so Saul's getting set up because I had some internet problems right before the show started, so I'm calling in on the line, on the phone. Hey, Rod, how you doing?
What's going on, Lee? I'm all right. How about yourself?
I'm good. So, again, we have no guest host today, or I misheard whatever was going on, right?
Yeah, no, there's no guest host today.
Okay, that's what I thought. It is a little confusing to me because on Wednesday last week we had Terry Smith, right? And it's Thursday with Carter, correct?
Yeah, every other week.
Okay, every other week. So I'm less baffled than I thought I was. But we have a great show today, although I will say no guests who are in America. Not no Americans, because Austin Pelly, who's up in Ottawa in the second hour, he is clearly an American. However, he's in Ottawa. He's in Canada, which is now the Third Reich, apparently. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, and I can't wait to talk to Austin, who's been doing a great job for us up there in Ottawa, about these emergency. Have you looked into these emergency powers much, Rod?
Yeah, and that has to do with the title of the show today, because allegedly they're going to start arresting these truckers. And there was a change in the show. The first guest is not going to be Peter Oliver anymore. It's going to be Ted Rall.
Okay, that's good to know. So I thought it would be Peter in like 10 minutes, but it'll be Ted Rall in like a half hour, correct?
Correct.
Bottom of the hour. Well, because here's why. Our show starts, even though it's 4 to 6 p.m. East Coast time, that's like midnight in Russia. And I'm not saying that Peter's in Russia. He's not. He's usually in Berlin. But still, it's pretty damn late. It's like 11 or something in Berlin, right?
Correct.
So we try to get him on as quickly as possible. But with Ted Rall, he's just in Manhattan. So screw that. You know, he comes on at 4:30. We don't have to mess with the schedule. But Ted Rall's running us the first hour. Good to know. And then Austin Pelly from Ottawa next hour. And we're taking your calls, 202-521-1320. It's The Backstory. Now, I want to wish everyone, because, you know, we like wishing people happy holidays here, because we don't get to do it very much. By the way, on Monday, we will not be wishing you a happy holiday because we'll be taking a holiday. This is why we don't do it very much. We've never had a show where we've gotten to say, Merry Christmas or Happy Thanksgiving or whatever. Happy 4th of July. We've never done that one time in the history of broadcasting here. You ever heard that, Rod?
No.
You've never heard me say to people on Christmas Day, Merry Christmas, everyone, and not because I'm a grinchy, grouchy bastard, although some have suggested that. But it's because we take every holiday off. Every federal holiday, there is no live programming here on Radio Sputnik. So this coming Monday is no exception. Now, I thought this was, originally it was wasn't it George Washington's birthday? Am I hallucinating that, Rod? And then they changed it to President's Day?
Yeah, I believe you're right, because I think when I was a kid, it was... Yeah, I believe you're right, because when I was a kid, it was Washington's birthday, I believe.
That's what I thought. And they'd have and now it's President's Day. So I guess because Washington was a white man, we can't have a holiday about him. I'm just saying. I don't know if the woke identity politics stuff had anything to do with it. I doubt it. but it's now President's Day. Anyway, we have that on Monday, so we have the 3-day weekend. So we have that off, right? You know that, Rod. Are you having any big plans for the 3-day weekend?
No. Hopefully it'll be nice so I can go outside with the kids in the park and walk around and stuff like that.
Rub it in. Go ahead. That's just what I want to hear about how nice it's going to be for you in the park with kids. That sounds nice. Today, I went to downtown Sioux Falls, and it was only like 27 degrees, which is positively balmy, but the wind was like 25 miles an hour. And I didn't remember a couple weeks ago when we had Adam Soes on the show from The Rebel. Remember when he was on? He said it was...
Yeah, from Alberta.
Alberta, right. And he was talking about how cold it was there. And, he's Canadian, so he's right. I'll grant him that. But he was talking about the things that people wear that are face coverings. And he pronounced the word right. I'm going to call it a baklava, which is not what it is. A baklava is a delicious little dessert treat, right? That's what baklava is. It's like baked candy or something. But it's the balaclava or something. He pronounced it right. But I have 3 of those, Rod. I bought those because they do help. And what it's like a mask for someone who's overcompensating. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Because they not only go over your mouth and your nose, but they wrap around the back of your head, around your ears, then they go down over your neck. And so it's like somebody who, a mask is not enough. And they're like, I need to go further. But anyway, I didn't bring one of those, and it was a huge mistake. I should have just stuffed it in my lower pants pocket, by which I say I have these very nice, what I mean is they're not ripping apart by very nice. They're cargo pants, Rod. So I've got pockets down on my knees. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you can put a lot of stuff in cargo pants.
Right. Yes, I can, and I do. That's where I stick my gloves and stuff like that. And it's nice to have, especially in the wintertime, when you may want a pair of gloves handy, but not that handy. Does that make sense? So these are quality pants. I got them downtown. What I mean by that is they're one of those pants that have the metal rivets in them. You know what I'm talking about? When
yeah, I know you're talking about. I know you're talking about. I saw. No, go ahead.
They're almost carpenter pants. If I had any carpenter skills, which I do not, where you could hang a hammer from. That's what I mean by quality. Some pants, if you hang a hammer from them, goodbye pants. These ones have the rivets and everything. So they're my nice cargo pants that I bought for the winter. Although they're not insulated or anything. They're just sort of normal pants. If I was trying to do it right, I'd wear long johns. But I can't quite bring myself to do that. Because in case I fell over, which I've been known to do, because I've been hospitalized a few times with strokes and stuff. In case I fell over, I wouldn't want anyone to make fun of me because I'm an old guy wearing long johns. And you see what I'm saying? I just don't want to be caught dead in those. By the way, what the hell's going on with Bob Saget? Let me ask you, Rod. Since we're talking about people dying, in this case me, let's talk about someone who's actually dead, Bob Saget. Did you see that his family does not want the results of his autopsy released publicly? Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that, and that's real suspicious. There could be a couple of reasons. Could be a couple of reasons. I mean, it'll be all conspiracy if we the reasons, but the fact they're trying to keep it from not coming out publicly is raising all these theories.
And right, and I'll put it like this: it better be. Here's what it is. Has anyone in the conspiracy world suggested autoerotic asphyxiation, Rod? Has anyone suggested that?
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
Well, okay, do you know what that is? Because those are big words. I'm not saying you don't know big words. Because some people might not know what autoerotic asphyxiation is. But that's how the lead singer for In Excess, Michael Hutchins, died. That's where the way you get your jollies. I think I can say that. The FCC, can I say jollies, Saul? Let me ask that. Jollies I can say, correct?
Yeah, you can say jollies.
Okay. So the way you get your jollies is you hang yourself, often in a closet, by use a belt or something. Here's my thing, Rod, and I'm no prude, for God's sakes, but I don't need my jollies that much. As soon as I start going, you know what I need to do here in this circumstance? I really need a belt around my neck for me to finish. I get at that point, I become a monk. You see what I'm saying, Rod?
Yeah, no, I get you.
It just
that's more detailed. That's more detailed than I knew. I thought it was just you like getting choked a little bit. I didn't know it goes that far.
No. That's what happened to Michael Hutchins. Apparently, he wasn't choked a little bit because he's dead. So it wasn't like, honey, can you put your hand up a little higher? You're in my baklava. No, a little. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't that. It's no. He's like in a closet with, I guess, a belt because your necktie. That'd be embarrassing. You don't want to fall. And ruin a tie. And not all ties are meant to handle the weight of a lead singer for an Australian rock band, In Excess. A pretty good band, too, by the way, and a very good singer. But apparently, something had happened along the way where his jollies required putting a belt around his neck and going to a closet. And I'm not saying that's what happened to Bob Saget. I'm just saying at one extreme end of the pool, if that's what happened, I can see why they don't want people to think of Bob Saget, because people make funny faces anyway when they get their jollies. Have you noticed that, Rod? Is that something you've noticed in the past? You don't say that to the person you're with. Like, you're making a funny face right now. But let's be realistic. People make funny faces, right?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, now imagine that combination of that funny face and the funny face you'd make when you realize you're hanging yourself, and this is going to make the Inquirer. You see what I'm saying? Because the last thought that I can't say this for sure, and we have no way of knowing until we meet again somewhere down the road in heaven or whatever. If you can go to heaven after dying through autoerotic asphyxiation, the Bible's a little vague on it. I'm just going to say that. But I predict that the last thought that was going through Michael Hutchins' head was not, how do I get out of this belt, or this is not getting my jollies off. It was something like, oh no, this is going to make the paper. You see what I'm saying? That I've got to believe he had some awareness at the end that people were going to be goofing on him for a long time, right? Because that's not the way I'm just saying. When people are composing their final bucket list, that's not on it for most people. You see what I'm saying, Rod?
Yeah, no, especially as a celebrity, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, not Elvis's fault, but, people know that he died on the toilet, so you can imagine about this Michael Hutchinson guy.
No, that's right. Yes, and Elvis, imagine what was going through his death. Oh, you follow me? Right before the end, he's like,
"It was relief. It's relief.
This is not going to look good." Could be. We'll never know. Again, or we'll know down the road, and then we won't be able to tell anybody. Because no one. Here's the thing about heaven: whatever your spiritual beliefs, no one's doing podcasts from there. Can we agree on that, Rod?
No, it's not on Spotify yet.
That's right. And if it were, now, by the way, I mention this because we'll talk about Invasion Day and other fake holidays. Like, and Tarif, I see on the line, I'll get to you just in 1 second, but I want to talk about this fake holiday. We have a real holiday, President's Day, coming up. Did you hear that in Ukraine it's Unity Day?
I did see that, and it was just kind of weird that all this going on, that it's like it's Unity Day.
So here's what it is. It's a holiday they made up. They didn't even make it up like adding Juneteenth to the calendar, because Juneteenth has been around for a while. They didn't just make it up last year. Although I'd never heard anybody talking about Juneteenth. Now, I'm serious, Rod. Had you heard people saying Juneteenth needs to be a federal holiday until it was? Did I miss that conversation?
I did start hearing about it when I was in college, but it wasn't from people who celebrated it. It was from white liberals. I just got to be honest.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. But anyway, we got our first Juneteenth coming up in June that we're getting off, because it came too late last year for us to get it off. It was last minute. It was suddenly boom, 1, 2, 3, go. Juneteenth now. But Unity Day they just made up, and they did it on the day that they were supposed to be invaded by Russia. Now here's the thing, Rod. Again, I'm going to go out on a limb here. If I thought we were about to be invaded by a foreign power, I would not say, do you know what we need? A holiday where people are armed with flags. You follow me?
No, I'm 100% with you on that.
Right. So that just shows that they weren't really that scared. Because when you declare a holiday and you're handing out not rifles, not ammo, not knives even, not even a steak knife, a Ginsu knife or something, when you're just handing out, hey, everyone, wave a flag, and not even a white flag of surrender like they might have done in France. Couldn't help that joke, sorry. But the French like surrendering. That's the joke there. But how do you say I surrender? You speak French, Rob. We learned that last week. How do you say I surrender, I'm a monkey? Like, I'm a surrender monkey. How would you say that in France? You know? No?
I didn't get that far in class, I'm sorry.
I would have thought I surrender would be day one in French class. Like the first thing they show you. It's de toi, whatever it is, I surrender. Right? Oui, bonjour, and I surrender. I would have thought that would be day one. But 202-521-1320. Let's go to our friend Sharif, who's impatiently waiting. By the way, you're very patient with me, Sharif. You've never come on and once said, would you just shut up, dude? Get to the point. I've never heard you say that, Sharif. This is your chance. Go ahead.
I have two comments. First, I'd like to say free genocide, free Donlinger, and hashtag no more. Okay, my first comment is dealing with the Canada convoy thing, with that emergency act was passed. I come to find out today, not only they're going to go after the truckers' bank accounts, they're going to go after people bank accounts that support the truckers. I'm talking about like retweeting on social media saying that they support the truckers. And that way, that means that they're going to freeze their accounts, Canadian accounts too, that shows support. And the people came and sued the people, like the bankers, that the ones that's going to freeze their accounts. They came and sue them in court. They're going to be protected by the Emergency Act. So they're going after any and everybody that support the truckers in Canada now. That's messed up. The truckers, what they have to do is just go home and don't hold nothing. That's the best way they can do. And you will see in the U.S. truckers don't deliver nothing to Canada. Nothing, unless it's medicine and food. And anything else, don't deliver. You know what I'm saying? They got to be shown that, you know, working people is the ones that are standing up, you know. My second comment is dealing with the Ukraine fiasco. It came out today, dealing with the U.S., that our housing market the bubble might bust this year, and it's going to be just as bad as 2008 or even worse if they increase the interest rates. I was thinking about something. I said, what if the whole thing is about destroying Ukraine economically, creating refugees? Refugees would get up and leave out of Ukraine and go to Poland and Germany, would cause them to spend more money on welfare to help out those people, which by printing out more euros, right, which in turn can cause a hyperinflation in Europe, destroying the euro, and the U.S. dollar can reign supreme. So that's another way of looking at it, that it is bigger. It might be bigger than Ukraine. It might be just designed to destroy Russia and Europe together. What y'all think about that?
Well, I don't. That's a little much. I don't think Biden and crew are thinking that far ahead. But I'll tell you one thing we'll talk about, and hopefully, are we going to try to get Peter Oliver on tomorrow, Rod?
He's on Friday.
He's on Friday. Okay, this week sometime. Because I want to ask Peter about this. Did you hear, Rod, and great call, Sharif, as usual, that they moved the embassy from Kyiv to Lviv or whatever it is? That's up in the western part of Ukraine by the Galicia region, or Galicia, or however they pronounce it. That area near Poland and Germany. Did you see that we moved the embassy there?
Yeah, I believe that was on Friday, right? I believe that was one of the things that went unreported on the news.
Yes, but that's a big deal, because here's what I think is going on. I think Ukraine is still divided right now, that they kind of want a breakaway republic in Western Ukraine. Does that make sense? Because if they held an election and everybody was included in it, including the people in Eastern Ukraine in those breakaway regions, there's no way. Zelensky right now is Trump for them in the following sense. Zelensky was a candidate. If you want somebody who's not a professional politician, you voted for Zelensky, who was a Netflix comedian. And in the same way, I'm not saying their ideologies are the same, not that Trump really has an ideology, but one of the reasons I think people, tell me if you think I'm wrong on this, Rod, I think one of the reasons people voted for Trump is he seemed like, well, here's the guy who's not a professional politician. Let's give him a shot and see, we can't do worse, right? Do you think that was some people's thought process?
No, definitely. And he was talking to people's concerns, whether it be immigration, crime. He was talking about corruption. He admitted that he would donate to both Democrats and Republicans, and they'll do anything for money. So no, I agree with you on that.
And Zelensky was saying at one point, and again, people like Mark Sloboda, when he comes on, is a little cynical about this because he doesn't like Zelensky, and not that I like him, but I know he was talking actively about ending the conflicts in Eastern Ukraine. And I think people gave him a shot, and they saw that didn't work out real well. So no one's going to do that again. If you're out there and you've got an erstwhile YouTube series, or you're on the Ukrainian version of The Bachelor, let's say, you follow me, or Ukrainian Big Brother, which has an actual Big Brother on it. I'm just saying. If you're doing that and you're like, my next move is president, Kanye thinking, forget it. They're not going to vote for you again just because you're an outsider. Because they've seen that Zelensky ended up like every freaking politician in Ukraine and censoring, shutting down TV stations left and right. 4 different TV stations have been shut down. Think about that, Rod. as bad as we think Biden is, he's urged Spotify to censor Joe Rogan, but he's not actually gone through with it and said, we're canceling Newsmax or whatever. He's let the corporations do that. So I think that move could be not temporary, is my point. The move with the embassy in the western part of Ukraine, that could be a breakaway region where they just have Western Ukraine, which would vote. See, here's one of the problems with the lack of invasion today, because it's Invasion Wednesday, right? The newspapers are saying for sure the invasion was going to be today, correct? Remember that? They weren't iffy about this. They were saying today's the day, 1 a.m., the invasion starts, right? So here's what we can say. At very least, and I'm giving them as much benefit of the doubt as possible here. At very least, our intelligence community absolutely sucks at their job, right? Because let's say they weren't lying. Let's say they really believed today was going to be the invasion. They were completely wrong. You see what I'm saying, Rod? So at best, at worst, they're what I think, which is they're intentional liars lying up a narrative. At best, they suck. And that's not a good, but you see where I'm going with that, Rod?
No, I agree with you. And I would use the R word that we're not allowed to say on the radio this is the way they're acting, because, for you to say, we know for sure this is going to happen, and now Russia's making fun of it. It's just, you're caught with your pants down.
Well, one of the reasons that they're doing it, I think, is that they knew the media was not going to say boo about it. They knew there would not be headlines. Intelligence community got it wrong. You follow me? That was not going to happen. Period. The New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, et cetera, we're not going to come out and go, hey, what happened here? They would just help them cover for it. You follow me? And so, given that they had the wind at their back with the media, they knew they could say anything, including the fact, we heard the speech yesterday, Biden in his speech yesterday, did you hear him say there's 150,000 troops?
Yeah, I heard him say that.
I heard that number. Now, again, that's up 50K from what they'd been saying. And they never said, oh, hey, a lot more troops have just shown up. Did you ever hear that headline?
No, that never happened.
What I said was, and this is a good joke, although it'll confuse people at first, but it's okay, it's supposed to, is that if you were betting on a Ukrainian invasion today, you also bet on Tampa Bay on Sunday. You see what I'm doing there, Rod? Because they weren't even playing. Tampa Bay was not even in the game on Sunday. By the way, you notice we're not. If you notice all the commercials, they call it the big game because they can't say the Super Bowl. You know that, right?
Oh, actually, no, I didn't notice that.
Okay, so watch this next time the Super Bowl is coming around. No one in an ad, unless you're paying the Super Bowl to be a sponsor, you can't say the word Super Bowl. So what you'll see ads for, you need a pizza for the big game? That's what they say all the time. That's somebody who did not pay for the sponsorship. You follow me? So, and now that you know that trick, you'll hear it all the time. And you'll go, you cheap bastards. You did not want to pay for the sponsorship. So you're just saying the big game. But everybody knows what they mean by the big game. So this is an embarrassment to us worldwide, I would say. The U.S. looks stupid and ridiculous because we were saying date positive. Today is Invasion Day. And did I miss the headline? There was no invasion, was there, Rod?
No, not on this planet.
That's right, and that's the planet we're on. But coming up right after this is our good friend Ted Rall from Planet Manhattan, right here on The Backstory.
Want to talk? Get in touch with us at radio@sputniknews.com.
So, Sean, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, Bob, that's easy. I want to talk about the need to stop the development of self-driving cars.
Again, Sean, you're driving me nuts. I think the self-driving car thing's already out of the gate.
No. It's never too late. See, now the leading experts in the field, I mean, just pick one, whichever one, leading experts have repeatedly warned us about the dangers of artificial intelligence. Look, I'm telling you, man, we have to stop the robots by any means necessary.
I see what you did there.
Yep.
Tune into our show By Any Means Necessary daily from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Radio Sputnik. And don't forget to call in at 3:20 p.m. to our studio number 202-521-1320.
And if you miss us live, check us out on SputnikNews.com, Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date on the latest political, social, and economic movements shaping the world around us.
Feeling kind of blue, but maybe also kind of red, and kind of purple, and kind of alone? You've got a friend on Radio Sputnik. Tune into Political Misfits from 12 to 2 Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, for news, politics, and culture without the two-party bias. Catch us daily on 105.5 in Washington, D.C., or 102.9 or 104.7 in Kansas City. Or find us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your news.
Are you bored? Are you lonely? Do you need a hug? Well, we can't give you that, but we can keep you up to date on Radio Sputnik.
And we are back. 105.5 FM, AM 1390 is where you can find us on your radio dial in the Washington, D.C. area. By the way, if you've got a dial, you might want to upgrade that stereo system in the car. And you might want to upgrade it to something that's not called a stereo system, because that's old too. Joining us right now, straight out of an island off the coast of America called Manhattan, Ted Rall is with us, author, cartoonist, bon vivant. Hey, Ted, how you doing?
I'm good, Lee. How are you doing?
I'm pretty groovy, although I'm a little disappointed by this invasion. I've got to say.
What invasion?
It was not right. That's hence the disappointment. This was not the invasion I feel like a kid coming downstairs Christmas morning, and under the tree is rug. It's just carpet. Does that make sense? Nothing under the tree.
I don't know what kind of Christmases you had at your house, but war is not really that good of a thing. So, I wasn't expecting an invasion at all. So, I didn't think there was going to be one. So, I'm not surprised, but so I can't say I'm pleasantly surprised that there isn't one, but I am happy that there isn't one, but I didn't think there was going to be one. And I don't think most intelligent people thought there was going to be one.
Well, and I want to talk about that because that's a very important point cognitively. But first, let me say something, Ted, you being a commie, an actual commie. By the way, the last couple times we've had you on, we've had guest hosts on. And have you noticed how baffled they are that you're a likable communist, Ted? Have you noticed?
Well, they need to get out more and, hang out at like the fun commie disco parties. And, we're a party ideology.
Right. Well, okay. But, so I actually defended the far left today, and I'm going to do it again. Somebody was up saying the far leftist ideology, the Biden administration, was promoting this war. And I said, the far leftists I know, I'll put it like this. Would you, if you had to measure your leftist credentials as a far leftist, how do you stack up against a guy like George Galloway?
I don't think there would be. I think if we had a left off, I think I would win unless it was the die was as cast as like the Sarah Palin jury.
Okay, including Galloway, you're saying toe to toe in the commie brackets that they do during March Madness for commies. You're saying you would beat Galloway. You're left of Galloway.
I would say so. Mm-hmm.
Now, why do you say that? I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious, Ted.
Well, I mean, I wrote a book called The Anti-American Manifesto, calling for the replacement of the entire economic and political system of the United States, and called it the Anti-American Manifesto. I don't think he's gone quite that far.
Okay, but he was the head of the Scottish Socialist Party when he was like 16 years old. That's pretty good.
So he was young. Yeah, he's precocious. That's cool.
Yeah. Now, but you'd agree he's a real leftist, right? You wouldn't. You're not dissing Galloway, right?
Nah, not at all. I just don't give up. I don't take second place, left off to anybody. Like, bring it on now, Satan,
Okay, now I appreciate that competitive spirit for a commie. But we'll let people stew on that one for a second. But my point was, the people I know who are real leftists are anti-war because one of the things I assume that part of the anti-war thing comes from being anti-imperialist. Have I learned the lingo enough where I'm basically correct on that one, Ted?
That is correct. Yes. No war but class war, and most war is imperialist. Almost always, not always, but mostly.
Now, what the U.S. was doing here, they were called out by people in Russia, officials saying, like, look, this is what you're doing is spreading propaganda and fear that an invasion is about to happen. And that's against, and they named some international charter thing that somebody signed, nobody really pays any attention to. But do you agree that what the U.S. and the U.K., let's not leave them out, were doing was clearly warmongering propaganda in and of itself a kind of act of war?
I wouldn't go so far as to call it an act of war, but I would definitely say that it's warmongering. I think what they did was reckless and irresponsible. Certainly, anyone has the right to be concerned about any theoretical possibility, but this is what diplomacy is for, and they need it instead of stirring up the pot in the press and riling up people. I mean, it's extremely telling that who wasn't really that worried about Ukraine being invaded was the people and the president of Ukraine. They mostly didn't think it was going to happen. So it's like, maybe we could take a cue from them.
But we can't do that. Now this brings me, speaking of, it does relate, but speaking of people who get confused with far leftists, Justin Trudeau, I see people on the right refer to him as a far leftist. But Justin Trudeau proved, I think what you're seeing in Canada right now, it proves, let me say this, and I'll sound like 1930s era commie, but I think it proves the power of the worker, right? I think what you're seeing in Canada is the last thing Justin Trudeau wanted was businesses shut down and commerce that would help business shut down. And it showed really the power, because there's no question, I don't think, that people who are truck drivers, for instance, those people are workers, right? They're not, and I think what we saw from Trudeau there was not the fear of the far left, was the fear of the establishment left, of the liberals, right? What's your analysis of
I agree
what's
with
going
that.
on up
I
there,
think
Ted.
that's, first of all, yeah, clearly truck drivers are workers. They were maybe not moving in that direction at the height of the power of the Teamsters Union, but it's really, no question now, a working class occupation, and the agitation and the form of the agitation that they decided to undertake in Canada is definitely a typical working class gambit. I mean, it was a muscles and broad blockade / strike. And it's remarkable because it wasn't really that many people. Can you imagine with a bigger force? Like what could be done? I mean, they accomplished an awful lot for a small number of people.
Well, you bring up something. One of the reasons I like talking to commies, I've always liked it on here on Radio Sputnik, is when I talk to people like, let me name a couple other people who are commies who are on. Caleb Maupin, for instance, and he's very clear. That's his ideology. Same way George Webb is a socialist, and you are. One of the things I've noticed when I talk to people, Brian Becker, when he's been on, is to a person, you guys really know history, particularly history of the communist and socialist movement. Have you noticed that about you and others of your ilk, Ted?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a chicken or egg thing. I don't know if communism brings you to studying history or leftism brings you to bringing history. I'd like to think that studying history brings you to leftism, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, I'll just say this. If you were to talk to the average person on the right, they wouldn't be able to tell you anything that was going on in the 30s, really, let's say. Or they don't really know people like Lysander Spooner, for instance, or any of the... And the reason I bring this up is you called this a what did you say, brawn and muscle?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me talk about that. These truckers, it does remind me of the early days of the labor movement. And I'm going to pick on the SEIU people. The current union, and you know this, at protests, when union people show up in force, they're in purple T-shirts that say SEIU on them. And do you know who's intimidated by that? Nobody. Am I right? Have you ever seen an SEIU rally? People are like, oh, it's those SEIU people cross the street. But back in the early days, you see where I'm going with this. Back in the early days of the labor movement, these were people who would take on the Pinkertons, right? And they would throw down.
Badasses. Yeah, they were badasses.
They were.
I mean, they were street brawlers. They fought in the streets.
Yes, and these truckers and the people supporting them remind me more of those like 20s and 30s union people, right? When you're talking about like Haymarket, stuff like that, right? You see what I'm getting at.
Or the mine workers in West Virginia, that kind of thing, like Matewan, that kind of stuff.
Yes. Matewan's a good example of what's gone. The SEIU people won't even watch the John Sayles film Matewan. They don't even. That's how frightened they are. Even Coal Miner's Daughter is a little too scary for them. But I really do think, because I've been saying this for the past couple of days, I think if people on the right, and by the right, I'm talking not European right, not Nazis. I just mean center right Republicans, let's say. I'll put it like this: the ideology of the people who are up in Canada, I would broadly call right, but not extremely. They're more just common sense workers. And I think in a lot of ways, the modern liberal establishment left has moved away from workers by focusing on identity politics and focusing on obscure issues of gender. And I don't mean, and you know what I'm getting at, like obscure issues of gender would be when Stonewall was happening in New York and people were fighting for gay rights, it was not about can you compete against women in athletics. There was real issues that were going on where certain sexual acts were illegal in this country, and people were busted for them. And that's a different thing than somebody competing in a swim meet against women who was not born a woman and winning, by the way. So I think that the left, the establishment left, has moved away from workers. Do you agree, disagree? Sometimes you disagree, and it's always fun, Ted. Say whatever you think.
I wish I could disagree here. We'd be having a different conversation, though, if I did. I mean, there is no way anyone could possibly disagree with that statement. Both the sort of corporate left, like the Democratic Party, and the actual left, such as it is, have moved completely away from workers. There is no real meaningful connection between workers and the left in the United States.
And let me even make a pitch here for unions slightly. Okay, the stuff that the truckers were upset about is the kind of thing that back in the day unions would have stepped up and through the power of collective bargaining fought for the rights of the truckers. But what we saw was sort of half-hearted collective bargaining by some of these unions, like in the airlines and stuff like that. But this is, I would argue, if you take the position that unions have value, which a lot of people on the right don't even grant that at all. I'm not one of them. But obviously, a strong union collective bargaining agreement could have headed off a lot of the problems the truckers were having, I think. Would have said, no, we're not going to do this. And if you try to make us do it, we'll shut you down now. And they wouldn't have had to drive to Ottawa to do it. But Ted, do you agree that collective bargaining could have really cut off a lot of problems that they're having?
Yeah, I mean, just think about where we are now. And look, I'm vaccinated. I'm for it. We've talked about this. I'm a big fan. I think everyone should get vaccinated. But, okay, just think about where we are. Before this pandemic, the only employer who could force you as a worker to get to inject something into your body, whether you liked it or not, was the military. When you joined the military, because you basically become the property of Uncle Sam. No one else could do it. No one. And now it's, just in 3 short years, we're in a very different place. And, I wrote about this for the Wall Street Journal. I don't think this is a position that the left ought to take. It's not a leftist pro-worker position. It's like if the government wants people to get vaccinated, they should do a better job of promoting it. They should not force people or coerce them or threaten their jobs.
Well, and imagine, Ted, if they come out with mandates that required everyone who's a cartoonist to get vaccinated. The problem with that, among other problems, would be it's stupid. There's nothing about being a cartoonist that means you're especially need to get vaccinated. And I would argue it's the same thing for truckers. That's not a position like you're handling food or you're working in healthcare, where at least there's a plausible argument. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not saying they should have been mandated either. I'm saying to do it to truckers makes as much sense as to do it to cartoonists. And even though you were vaccinated, I totally
agree with you. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's kind of like, it's kind of like drug testing. I don't see why, like, if you're a file clerk, you should be drug tested. But if you drive a train, yeah, you should be drug tested.
And now what they've done is, we had Tariq call in earlier, and he pointed out they're seizing the bank accounts of people. And let me talk about something there, too. One of the things that's going on in Canada, we'll talk to Austin Pelly's up in Ottawa next hour about some of this stuff. But the U.S. banks were going right along with the Canadian government and spying on their own citizens, their own, what are they called? Not citizens, customers, right? You're not part of Bankenstein or whatever. But people who are customers of U.S. banks, the banks were rolling over like puppy dogs and complying with a foreign government. It's pretty close, but still foreign. And that, I think, should frighten everybody. Ted, what do you think about the fact the banks were complying with these requests to spy on their own customers?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. As a banking customer myself, I would be extremely dismayed if one of my banks were to do that.
And at this point, it's very hard. The other thing that they're doing, for instance, is part of this Emergency Powers Act that they put through up in Canada. One of the things is they're saying that if you're under the age of 18, you can't go to a protest. Now, that seems to me like I don't get that one at all. First off, I don't even understand whose benefits that to, Ted. Were they worried that these 16 and 17-year-olds, all 5 of them, because most people don't want to hang out with their parents, especially at a protest. I'm just saying. Were they worried that the 16 and 17-year-olds were a big threat? Or was it somehow like the child exploit? They were worried about the 16. I just don't even understand at all what that move's about. Do you get that one, Ted?
I didn't hear anything about the rationale there, but I will say, as someone who's a strong believer in the rights of children, I think that's a violation of their constitutional rights. I mean, if there's no reason why a 16-year-old can't be civically engaged. I canvassed for George McGovern when I was 9 years old. I mean, with my mom, I think it's kind of cute. I don't think that should have been illegal.
Yeah, no, and I always, my kids would always go with me when I would cover protests and stuff as a reporter. And my son Shane, who you've talked to when he was the co-host of Fault Lines, Shane went to Occupy Wall Street at Zuccotti. And I just think back, I think that was good parenting on my part because he was at Occupy Wall Street at Zuccotti. He was at an event in history. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of cool.
Totally
Decades
cool.
from now, he'll be able to look back, and as they're telling the story of what happened in the century, he'll be able to go, yeah, I was there. I was actually there. And I thought that was, again, some may disagree, but I thought that was good parenting. And he was helping me and I was doing reporting and I've got my opinions on stuff, but I didn't tell him you got to think the way I do or anything like that. I just think it was neat you could experience it. And it's the same thing up in Ottawa. Now, I don't get how it's not like they don't have a constitution exactly, Ted. They've got a charter. I keep hearing them talk about the charter. And it's not as cool sounding as the Constitution. It sounds a little more legalistic. But okay, it's Canada. They can do whatever they want to. But it was weird to me, some of the things that they're doing. And in general, I think we're getting to a point where I think the lesson learned from Canada is if you want to really make people nervous, mess with business. Is that the lesson here, Ted? That's what they don't want you to do.
Well, that's always been the lesson of any kind of left-wing agitation, man. It's like you are confronting capitalism. And if you do it indirectly, they're not going to like it. But if you do it, directly, like you're really taking money out of the ruling class's pockets, man, are they going to get pissed.
Yes, to the point where they're putting all this stuff through literally an emergency act that they've never put in place before. And it was obvious. I think they made it very plain. The reason they did that is they're worried about commerce. And now I don't. Let me bring it back to this non-invasion today. I think the danger of a lot of this, Ted, and I'd like your take on this, because it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Ted. It's great. Thanks again for being on the show. I think what we're seeing is a very dangerous situation where we have government officials saying things and nobody really believes them. And if you do believe them, you're a sucker, right? And I think this is dangerous because if there was going to be a real invasion, it's almost like that Don't Look Up film that Adam McKay did, where the premise of that film was an actual meteor is going to hit Earth, and no one believes it. And aren't we in that situation? Was Adam McKay, once again, prescient in this case? Because do you think I think it's dangerous, really. The fact is, air raid sirens could go off and people would just go about go back to playing Wordle or whatever they're doing on their phone. But I think it's a dangerous situation. What do you think, Ted?
No, I mean, you're right. False alarms are dangerous. Lee, remember a few years ago when there was the emergency broadcast system was accidentally activated by the governor of Hawaii, and signs went up all over the place on highways saying that they were about to be blown away by nukes or missiles or something, some kind of missile strike. And like someone jumped down like a manhole. People were terrified, understandably. That's less likely to happen next time or the third time or the fourth time. And, it's like all the time, it's like whenever there's a hurricane, a lot of people refuse to leave. And, in the media, they always say like, well, can you imagine there's a hurricane coming and these people are so stupid, they don't want to leave. They're not so stupid. They've been through a lot of false alarms. They know it's not like the government is going to pay to put them up at the Ramada. They're going to hit the road, they're going to sit in traffic for hours, and the odds are it's not going to be a big deal, because it usually isn't until it is. So, yeah, I think, false alarms and alarmism is a very, very dangerous thing. It's the boy that cried wolf thing, and it's going to bite us one day.
Now, let me just ask you this. We'll finish up with this, Ted. And this is the litmus test for cynicism. I'm not saying they're doing it because I don't think you think that they're doing it in order to let people's guard down. But do you think that's such a foreseeable consequence that there's something weird going on why they're doing this over and over again? Are you suspicious, even though you don't necessarily know what's going on, that there's some ulterior motive? They can't be that stupid. What say you, Ted?
I think it's a march, Barbara Tushman march of folly kind of thing. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think they're so short-sighted that they can't think of, they're just not thinking ahead. They don't care. It's kind of like everybody does things that are short-sighted, right? Like everyone's like, I'll have this greasy, bad meal. And maybe one day it's the meal that will trigger my fatal heart attack. But just for now, I'm just going to do it. I think it's that same mentality. They're like, we'll just do it this one time, and this next time, and this other time. And then, oops. I think that's how human beings think.
Well, no, I think it's a great and very fair. And again, it's always a pleasure to talk to Ted Rall, R-A-L-L. Just get some capitalism in there.com. Rall.com is where you can get merch from the great Ted Rall. We'll be back. One more hour coming up today, halfway through the week on the Best Damn Radio Show. During the invasion, it's the backstory.
Listening to Radio Sputnik. Telling the untold.
we are back for one more hour of the best damn radio show in the world, the show that brings you the truth behind the headlines. I'm investigative journalist Lee Stranahan. This is The Backstory. I'd like to thank Ted Rall again. It's always a pleasure to talk to Ted, and a lot of fun. I never quite know what he's going to say because he's an independent thinker, but always great to talk to Ted. Coming up this hour from Ottawa, co-host of Fault Lines with Thomas and Pelly is the Pelly part of that. Austin Pelly will be joining us from Ottawa here on The Backstory. Now, I got to tell you, Rod, what part of me thinks we should have done this, and part of me is glad that we didn't do it. Because first off, it would have been extra work, but it would have been kind of fun for you and Saul. I should have set you guys up with, like, explosion sound effects, and we could have done a War of the Worlds type thing where the entire show, I was doing things like, whoa, Ted, whoever I'm talking to, Rod, Ted's not on anymore. But I could have said stuff like, Rod, we're getting this breaking news alert. Kiev has fallen. The 15th Air Cav of Russia has taken over. They're hanging the Russian flag from the tallest building. You see what I'm saying? I could have just made up. And throughout the show, we could have had updates, and you could have run sound effects. President Zelensky has announced he is handing his sword to Vladimir Putin, who's breaking it across his knee right now. We could have done what the intelligence community's done for weeks and just made crap up. Now, do you know what I've liked watching? My favorite part of this invasion so far. Do you know what it is, Rod?
No, but I'm waiting for you to tell us.
Okay, that's smart. Is the Russians, the Russian Ministry for Foreign Affairs, Maria Zakharova, and also Sergei Lavrov have been trolling. Did you see that Maria over there, the spokeswoman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Russia, said, hey, next time there's an invasion plan, tell me. I need to put it on my calendar. Did you see her say that?
Yeah, she said they want to know so they can take some vacation days on those dates. So it's a Mad TV skit now. They're just making fun of the Americans right now.
Right, and again, I said this yesterday. I think. Who did you say? Did you say Brave, Saul?
Yeah, okay. We have Brave on.
Okay, hang on. We'll get to you in one sec, Brave. But my favorite one, it was like Triumph the Insult Comic Dog. Bring us your sanctions for us to poop on. Except they didn't say poop. That was more Triumph. But you saw the statement by the official Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And they didn't say poop. They said the S word. Poop on your sanctions. You saw that, right, Rod?
Yeah. I mean, just looking at it from a person of knowledge and people who listen to this show and other shows here on Sputnik. But, I mean, it's just, like I said, it's just like, it seems like they're sitting in a room with a cigar and some drinks, just laughing, just making fun of what's going on.
They are. And I think it's a good response. We talked to Vivian Kubrick, whose father, Stanley Kubrick, of course, directed Dr. Strangelove. And one of the things she said in that interview is that Dr. Strangelove was originally not conceived of as a black comedy, but the subject matter was so depressing that Kubrick decided to make it a black comedy because it's the only way to get through the material, which is about nuclear annihilation, not normally a laugh a minute. And I think that's what's going on here. One thing the Cuban Missile Crisis was missing was trolling. You know what I'm saying, Rod?
Oh, yeah, totally a more serious situation. There definitely wasn't any internet back then, but it was definitely a more serious situation than compared to now.
Except it was just as serious in one sense. This really was risking a major conflict, but the U.S. did it so ham-handedly that at this point, no one, if you thought today was really going to be an invasion, You're just stupid. Sorry. I don't know how else to say it to you. Pull over. You're too stupid to drive. If you're in your car listening on 105.5 FM, AM 1390, seriously, pull over, because you're the kind of person who may be wondering what those pedals under your feet are. What does this do? Let me stomp my feet and see. We don't want you on the road. And the trolling is one of my favorite parts. But let's get serious. Some serious analysis. Let's go to Georgia with our correspondent there, Brave, our friend Brave, 202-521-1320. Hey, Brave, I just deputized you as an analyst. Go ahead.
I wear the badge with honor, man. Thank you very much. I don't know. I just wanted to comment on going for kind of what Ted Raw was just saying. Hopefully I won't get too serious. It's just my 2 cents. But I think it's easy and possibly maybe comforting to think or presume that these people that are making these people in power who are making these moves and making these decisions are just incompetent and just stupid. And a lot of them are, and that's warranted. But I find that hard to believe. I think it would be foolish of us to just think that or just assume that they are incompetent, and the reason why things keep going asunder is because they are incompetent. Because that would require us to believe that, say, Biden is actually making policy, is responsible for the policy that comes out of his administration, and Biden can barely find his way around the White House. So no one should believe that he's responsible for the policy that's coming out of the White House as much as we should believe that Trump was responsible for the policy coming out of his administration, right? So I think there's a lot of precedent that goes to show that there are huge money organizations and corporations and individuals who are kind of ordering these footsteps, man. You could call it the feet behind the curtain if you want, but there's been plenty of things that have come around to prove that is the case. And I just think that it's an easy way out to say that, oh, they're just incompetent. I also think it would be foolish for anyone not just to believe that there was going to be a invasion at 1 p.m. specifically, but to believe that they put that out there for us to believe it. I don't think that. I think that a lot of these things sometimes are distractions, right? And most times there are other things going on that we don't have the correct perspective on to fully understand or grasp, let alone to ever even have the insides on, because we're not inside the room anyways.
Okay, now, Brave, I'm going to ask you to stick around because I'm going to bring up the thing no one wants to say. I'm going to say the unthinkable here. Ready? The real possibility, the part of what's going on. Ready? One word, 3 syllables, inbreeding. I went there. That's correct. And here's the thing. This is not an idle insult. If you think about who the power elite are, let's start with the royal family. Need I say more? We all know that the royals, there was lots of inbreeding going on with the royals. But even if you look at modern globalist elites, like the Rothschilds, okay? When I was researching the Rothschild family recently, it's really interesting how much inbreeding was going on with the Rothschilds. Cousins marrying cousins and so on. And anybody can look it up and see what it is. And everyone knows that inbreeding does not add to your IQ, right? So some of it, I think, could be actual inbreeding, and some of it is the elites are so separated from regular people. They're so elite that, but don't downplay the inbreeding, because really, it's shocking. Anybody start to look up Natty Rothschild and Solomon Rothschild, start to look them up, and you'll see it was like his daughter married his brother. It's right there. And again, this stuff going on. So do you think possibly, Brave, inbreeding could be a factor? And again, no one wants to talk about it because it's creepy as hell. But But go ahead. What say you, Brave?
I don't know exactly, but I know this. We live in a world now where UFOs and aliens have been admitted. They've admitted that's a possibility, and Republicans are making pro-choice arguments, and Democrats are making pro-life, anti-freedom arguments. So at this point, I don't think anything can be taken off the table. I'm game for anything at this point because they've shown that anything is possible. The most conspiratorial conspiracy is possible. So who knows? But I will say that it does seem like, and this is Captain Obvious stuff, I guess, territory, but it's clearly a matter of keeping power within the circles of power and not losing it, right? Because you've got the same choices over and over again. They're all related. They're all tied together. So why not inbreeding? Who knows? I don't know. All I know is it would be a mistake for us to think that they are so stupid or so incompetent that they wage wars that make themselves billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. I don't think that's incompetence. I don't think that's incompetence at all.
Well, I've got to say, I can imagine this. Thanks for the call. Fantastic call. As usual, Brave. Thanks for putting up with me. But I've looked, when the State Department came out with this thing about Russian disinformation. By the way, that's a joke. The State Department talking about anybody's disinformation is stupid at this point. But I was looking at the org chart because they got a big org chart. And I not even make the org chart. But I can tell Sputnik we're below Putin and I think off to the side below the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I'm certainly not going to tell Sergei Lavrov, what to do. As Scott Ritter pointed out when he was on the show recently, Lavrov is a serious diplomat. But did you see the part today? Even Lavrov's getting in on the trolling. Did you see the part where they asked him about the Russian invasion and he just kind of looked at them silently? Did you see that, Rod?
No, I didn't see that. I didn't see Lavrov do that one. No, I didn't see that one.
There was some press conference and somebody asked him a question about the Russian invasion. And literally, he just kind of stared at them and let the cricket sound happen. You know what I'm saying? And it was
that today
great.
or was the one from previous?
I saw it today, so I believe it was today, but maybe not.
Oh, if it was the one where he was standing next to Truss, then yeah, I did see that one because I believe that's the one. Then yeah, I did see that.
He should do that every time it comes up. But again, so I'm not telling Mr. Lavrov, you're a serious professional. I'm not telling you what to say. But imagine if when you'd been in that press conference with Liz Truss, you looked over at her once said, inbreeding. Imagine if he dropped that, Rod. Just inbreeding. That would have been great. Because what are the British going to say about inbreeding? They can't really say much about it. They can't say it's a conspiracy theory or disinformation, can they?
No, they couldn't. But what they would probably do is use the tired old attack. I just saw a lady, I believe it was in Canada, that said eating meat was racist. So they probably use that. They just call them racist.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that. How stupid is it that Justin Trudeau, when the workers were obviously not happy about COVID, immediately went to the racist card in Canada? It's almost like a joke, right? It's almost like, well, he's not really going to put and I want you to think about what's happening in Canada. We'll talk to Austin Pelley about this. But one of the truckers' objections is to the person of Justin Trudeau, right? They oppose him. So what he's ordered is the seizing of bank accounts of citizens who oppose him. You see what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
I don't see how else to read that. Because one of their main things is they don't like him, right? That's one of their chief objections. So if that's not fascism, I don't know what is. When somebody seizes the bank, when you seize the bank accounts of people who don't like you, that's very telling. And that's what they put in place. And we'll talk about the new stuff when Austin Pelley comes on from Ottawa at the bottom of the hour. But what's happening in Canada, I think, there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. And we talked with Ted Rall about some of them, which is that the biggest thing these people have to fear, and by these people, obviously, did you see one of the things, Rod, is they're saying that you might not be allowed, if you're arrested for protesting, to travel to the U.S. again. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that, which would be the restriction of travel, but then they don't have any reason why they would restrict your travel based on a protest.
Right. Except they're just doing whatever they can. They're pulling out whatever they can. But I don't even see how but they can't. What we're seeing is a lot of behind the scenes. And somebody had a very good point about this earlier. We're seeing a lot of collusion between Canada and the U.S., except no one's talking about it openly. However, it looks like the same way I was predicting. I've said this before. I don't like making predictions unless they're layups. So here comes the prediction. Ready, Rod? The Republicans are going to take back the House and the Senate in November. Do you think that's risky on my part, or is that the most obvious thing in the world?
Oh no, it seems almost written in stone now.
And so one of the things that's going to happen if that happens is that the January 6th committee and that kind of thing, that's gone, that's over immediately. And by the way, we had some news on that today, which is the Biden administration is allowing the January 6th committee to have the White House visitor records from around January 6th. Now, I'm actually of a mixed feeling on this, Rod, because I actually don't think any president, I think this is here's the mixed feelings. It's a political hit job. Biden approved the visitor logs being released. You saw that, right? That's the headline today.
Correct.
And so it is absolutely a political hit job, and the whole January 6th thing is a political hit job. The whole thing's a bunch of hooey. But that being said, I don't think any politician has the right to withhold the visitor logs of who's coming to see them. Sorry.
But Lee, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, isn't it already public? Because we know D. Ray McKesson was meeting with Obama during when Black Lives Matter started out in the 2010s, the end of 2010s and whatnot.
And so scholars, yes, yeah.
So isn't it kind of already public? So isn't this just like theater right here?
Well, I think it sort of is, except I think there's some stuff that the Trump administration was trying to hold back, and I don't think that's a good move because I think that stuff should be public, absolutely should be public. In fact, let me run this by you because I talked about this stuff. I was kind of blue skying on Twitter a little bit. But I'm going to make two suggestions that I think would be very interesting politically. And do you want to hear the more radical one that's almost sci-fi, or do you want to hear the less radical one first? Tell me what order you want me to go in, Rod.
Let's go more radical first.
Okay, so the more radical one is something I call the public eye, which is every elected official, they swear in, they take the oath of office, and then immediately a number of body cams are put on them, some pointing at them, some pointing all around, but like the police wear, body cams. And those cams are on 24/7, period. So if you're an elected official and they're live streaming, they're not just recording, because there's only, 535 members of Congress and senators. So it's not like there's an infinite number of people. Technically, we could do this. And they're on all the time. And at any point of the day or night, you as a citizen can say, I wonder what the Nancy Pelosi cam's doing. And then you tune into that. You follow me? Now, what this would stop is any secret meetings of fundraisers or anything like that. You'd have to figure out how to work out, if people want to go potty or something. But, that one seems pretty easy. Just aim the camera differently. Okay? So that one I'm not worried about. But sometimes they're briefed on secret stuff. Now, I don't know quite how you'd handle that, technically. But that's the more radical one, is that every member of Congress, the president, members of the cabinet, should be wearing cameras 24/7 so people can see what they're up to. You see what I'm saying? That's fairly radical. Don't you think, Rod?
No, that is a little radical, but I believe that something like that should be, even if it's just a threat, empty threat, should be put out there for these politicians, because they're kind of in the wild, wild west right now. They're kind of doing what they want as far as, like you said, secrecy.
Do you know where I think I'd get a lot of support? Is the spouses of Congress people and members of the cabinet and so on. Because there would be one thing good luck cheating. Does that make sense? With body cams on 24/7. There'd be no hanky-panky going on. And then we can move to governors and stuff like that. But just start with Congress people, members of the Senate, and members of the administration. And that's the more radical one. That's sort of like a Black Mirror episode waiting to happen. But I really believe, by the way, I'm not saying it's an idle threat. I've thought about it a little bit. I think you have to work out some of the technical details. Here's the thing, because no one would, either no one or everyone. Let me ask you, Rod. So if you heard Jerry Nadler was having the stomach flu, right? And was one of those things where, maybe the chili didn't go down right. You get, I'm not going to get more detail, but you're getting the picture. And it's an audio picture. You follow me? Would you be more inclined or less inclined to want to watch? Be honest.
Oh, no, definitely less inclined.
Okay, but what if I think I can say, can I say monster fart? Is that something I can say, Rod? Saul, I mean?
Yeah, that's PG.
Yeah.
Okay. So gas. Imagine he was having monster gas. That would be, and again, I'm a human being too, so I'm not judging, but I am saying it would be hilarious. Wouldn't it kind of be hilarious, Rod? Admit it.
I mean, since he's already done it on the microphone, I think one time's enough, so I wouldn't want to hear it in private, you know what I mean? It's when he lets it all out.
Right. Now, so that's kind of the disturbing details you have to work out. Now, I'll tell you the one that's less radical, but I'm really serious on this one too, is that when you're elected to Congress, you take the oath of office, then they give you your card key for the congressional dormitory, and that's where you live in D.C., period. The congressional dorms. They could be separated, men's and women's. They could have mixed floors, like college. But I want them to be in a dorm, and here's why. Rent is pretty pricey around D.C., and if you're elected to Congress from South Dakota or wherever, you've now got to get in a place in D.C., right? So when Congress is in session, you need to live someplace. So I think the problem is that, people want nicer and nicer things. So I think getting rid of that entirely. Nope, you're in the dorm. maybe on the same floor with Adam Schiff, Chuck Schumer, Ted Cruz, whoever. Imagine whoever it is. But I think that kind of housing for them would solve it. And you have a doorman and it's secure and everything. But now you see what I'm saying? It's less radical. But I think, what do you think, Rod? What's your take on that?
I think that would be more plausible. Plus, you would have to you would be seeing people from both sides, so you have to talk to each other. You're not just talking through the media and spitting out narratives and not talking to each other. So that'd be more plausible than the other one.
I also would be in favor of no private bathrooms in the rooms, just dorms living, so everybody, there's the showers or whatever there. And again, I also, see, here's part of what it is. It also would discourage people. I'll put it like this. If you moved to D.C. because you were elected, just think about this practically, Rod. So you're now Senator Rod from Philly, okay? And you need to get a place in D.C., and you get a nice apartment, and it's furnished the way you'd like it, and so on. You follow me? You don't want to go back to Philly. You've got your apartment. You want to stay there. Does that make sense?
Right.
But I don't want you to want to stay there. I like the idea the Founding Fathers had, which is if you're a congressperson or whoever, they viewed politicians as this something you do for a year or two, then you go back home to your farm or whatever, your pewter shop, whatever people were doing for careers around the Founding Father times. You're making your quills. I don't know what you're doing. But my point is, it discourages career politicians out of the gate. And by the way, put this on someplace with a subway stop nearby so that people can take the metro into work. You dig? I'm sure some people would want to take...
I'm with you on that.
What are you thinking? Security or just that you don't want?
No, I'm talking about making them take public transportation. We know people like AOC take her Tesla to work. I don't even think she drives it. She probably gets driven by somebody. And so all these people, they kind of feel like they're royalty, American royalty.
Right, and that's part of why I want to do that with the bathrooms. By the way, the dorm bathrooms. Just no one's going to die. You'll be fine. Okay, sure, you have to go in there sometimes and look at Anthony Weiner flexing, like we were talking with Carmine, flexing his muscle and kissing him. You know what I'm saying? No one wants to see that, but someone's got to, apparently. And it may not be...
He's actually... Weiner's on the radio with Curtis Lewa.
Was he? Well, let's see.
They have a show together, I believe. I think they host it together now.
Okay, well, let's see if we can get Anthony Weiner on. Tell him it's me. I'm sure he knows who I am. Because I broke some news. I'd love to get him on. And you know me, I'm nice. Despite what some ex-wives of mine might say. I'm nice. I don't, you see what I'm saying? Even when I call people commies, I tell them how much I like them. Rod, you've seen that. So I would love to get Anthony Weiner on. I'd have some respectful questions, and I'd ask him what he remembers about that day Andrew Breitbart was on stage. And we'd have a great time. So if we can get Anthony Weiner, if you're listening out there, we'll take Curtis Lewa too. I'd like him on as well. But in the meantime, if we can get Anthony Weiner, that'd be great. Coming up, joining us live from Ottawa, co-host of Fault Lines with Pelly and Thomas, or Thomas and Pelly. I'm not sure. Is there an official answer to that? Is it Thomas and Pelly, or does it matter? Do you know, Rod?
I'm not sure.
We'll ask Austin Pelly coming up right after this, live from Canada on The Backstory.
Stuck in traffic? No problem. Stay informed. Stay tuned to to Radio Sputnik on 105.5 FM or 1390 AM in the Washington, D.C. area. Need more? Follow us on Facebook or check us out on SputnikNews.com.
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime.
I like beer. Yeah, we drank beer.
Whoever's in charge, and I want to record it.
Let's talk about that.
Discussing all the controversies and news across the disunited states of America. Tune in to Fault Lines every weekday from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern, only on Radio Sputnik.
In a media landscape filled with so-called journalists acting as stenographers for their billionaire bosses, there is a desperate need for news, analysis, and perspectives that buck the status quo and get to the heart of how domestic and international events impact you and me, as well as showing how we can get involved in the struggle to change that status quo. Check out By Any Means Necessary on Radio Sputnik, Monday through Friday from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern, to hear the stories and voices that mainstream media refuses to tell you. And join us as we connect the political, social, and economic movements shaping the world around us. That's By Any Means Necessary, Monday through Friday at 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on Radio Sputnik.
Hi, I'm political analyst Garland Nixon.
And I'm political scientist, author, and nationally syndicated columnist Dr. Wilmer Leon.
We're the co-hosts for The Critical Hour, airing Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on Radio Sputnik in Washington, D.C.
We close out your day with a thorough and hard-hitting analysis of the day's top stories, where we bring in brilliant scholars, authors, and investigative journalists from around the world.
And on Fridays, it's panel time, when we do a roundup of the week's most important issues.
Join us to keep up with the world's top stories.
Enjoy an in-depth analysis.
And have a little fun along the way. Listen to our show,
The Critical Hour, Monday through Fridays on Radio Sputnik.
And we are back live, 105.5 FM, AM 1390 in Washington, D.C. More than just a podcast, we're a damn radio show. You know that, Rod. We're actually on the radio, and I always like that. I'm Lou Stranahan, investigative journalist. This is The Backstory. And joining us now, out of Ottawa, the co-host of Fault Lines with Thomas and Pelly. I'm going to go with that for right now. Austin Pelly. Hey, Austin, how you doing?
Hey, Lee, thanks for having me on. And you got it right in that last one there. It is Thomas and Pelly. You know, it's his show first, so I got to give him the props and put his name first.
Well, see, you understand, because Pelly comes clearly, even though Thomas, I think it was Fault Lines with Thomas and Stranahan as well. But that, in a sense, didn't make any sense because technically, I think, well, they came the same day. So it wasn't even like a who's there first thing. And it's in reverse alphabetical order. But, you know, some things are a mystery. So how are things going? First off, just in general, are you enjoying yourself? And do you have the sense, this is what I was trying to say the other day, but, you know, sometimes I'm an idiot, Austin, and it's hard to understand what the hell I'm talking about. I was talking about the historical thing. Having been at some things, I was talking to Ted Rall about how my son Shannon was at Occupy Wall Street in Zuccotti Park. And then I covered in Helsinki the meeting between Trump and Putin. And I had the feeling at the time, wow, this is pretty freaking cool. This is a historic event. It'll be in the history books. So do you have the sense, Austin, being up there, that you're something, this is one of the major events in Canadian history. They'll be talking about this in decades. Remember when the trucks were in Ottawa, and there you are with them? Has that come home to hit you? Have you looked around at some points and gone, this is pretty cool that I'm here? Does that make sense, Austin?
You know, it makes sense, but, you know, I've been asked that question before, and honestly, no, it hasn't hit me yet. It's different because, you know, you hear about these life-changing and world-changing. I mean, there's no doubt that this convoy is changing the world right now, these world-changing events. I mean, they sparked some things all halfway across the world and they've all gone to Australia and France and all that, and the U.S. coming soon. So yes, it is world changing, but no, I haven't gotten that feeling yet. I think, I've always said, like, how when I'm growing up, my generation, we always heard from our elders and our vets, like, oh, I remember back in Nam. I always thought that was going to be us with the pandemic. Yeah, I remember surviving the global pandemic that was COVID-19, but I'm going to be able to tack something else onto that now. I think that's when it'll hit me, talking to like my kids or something, and say, hey, I survived the global pandemic, but also, that thing in the history books you read about that convoy that lasted a ridiculous amount of time and changed things in the world? Yeah, your old man was there.
Well, I had a similar thing. You can ask Jack about this, the producer for Fall Lunch, who's up there with you. I had that once. I was like, wow, I'm at Gatorland with Dog the Bounty Hunter. Now, Jack was there too. And I was just like, that's kind of weird. I'm at Gatorland with Dog the Bounty Hunter. And I was. And Jack was there too. And did Jack tell you about that ever, Austin?
No, but Shane did say that he had known Dog the Bounty Hunter.
Yeah, Dog's a friend of mine, and we went to Gatorland once with Dog and Beth, and Jack was there, and they were both snake handling. So if you are with any Canadian girls at a fabulous poutine restaurant or something, feel free to bring that up loudly in front of the girls. Just go, hey, Jack, tell us about the time you were at Gatorland with Dog the Bounty Hunter, and see if it impresses.
Wrestling some snakes, apparently.
Yeah, he was there's footage of this. It does not happen if there's not pictures, but there are pictures of it. So let me ask this, though. On the mundane sense, I know what it's like. We talked to Addie Ads on the show, who was covering the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. I know now how long have you been there? About 4 or 5 days now?
Since Saturday.
Yeah, so about 4 or 5 days, right? That's somewhere in there. Okay, so I'll bet by now, when you walk onto wherever you're walking to in Ottawa, at first it was like you're trying to figure out, okay, who's who, where do people go, etc. Now it's like, oh, look, there's Bob and Doug over there.
Pretty much, yeah.
Now you know people and they know you, right?
Yeah.
What's that like? Who do you know?
Well, Eric the trucker is always a go-to for us, but yeah, I've been. It's been weird, kind of feeling like, okay, I've done this before. It's been a day in, day out thing. I think today was the first day where Jack was like, "Hey, do you want to hit the convoy?" We'd already been there for like 3 hours today, and I said, "Well, we don't really need to right now. There's nothing really updated. I mean, yes, we hit it when the Emergency Act came out. We hit it today when the police were cracked down a little bit more, but we were already there for like 3 hours. So at this point, we've gotten our footage, we've gotten our interviews, and now we're kind of apprehensively waiting for the police to do something, which might happen pretty soon.
Now, I understand part of that is they were handing out pieces of paper today. I saw some of them online, but you probably held one in your hand. And to explain the pieces of paper they're handing out to people.
Sure, yeah. So the cops basically went around today and they posted a bunch of notices. And it seems to be very similar to what we heard, and I wasn't at the Ambassador Bridge, but what we heard on the Ambassador Bridge, which was a polite warning to leave. And then the next day they came in and started arresting people. And then the day after that, they cleared everything out completely. So that might be starting to happen here. The notice says you must leave the area now. Anyone blocking streets or assisting others in blocking the streets are committing a criminal offense and you may be arrested. You must immediately cease further unlawful activity or you will face charges. If you are arrested, you may be released on bail depending on factors contained in Part 16 of the Criminal Code, and it goes on much further. So they were posting those around. They were mostly handing them to people and sticking them on truckers' windows and such. But yeah, it seems like this is the nice warning that they're going to get.
Now, I want to ask you about some of the things that I've heard about up there. But before we do that, I would be remiss, and I'm not, if I did not ask you to explain what you learned about Eric the Trucker. Why is Eric the Trucker a go-to? Who is Eric the Trucker? I got to hear that. Austin?
Honestly, because most of these people are duolingual. They're bilingual. It's French and English. And Eric had one of the best English accents, I could say. He spoke English one of the best. Sometimes we talk to people or interview people, and it's just such a heavy accent. It would be kind of difficult to actually air that full interview without maybe subtitles or something. But Eric was good. He's been there since day one. He's had a couple fines put against him, and they took his gas before. So he's been invested along the whole way. So that's why he's a go-to. And he's always like super noticeable with his truck. He's not buried in the crowd, but he's always in the heart of the convoy, if that makes any sense.
No, it absolutely does. Now, I was listening to some reporting on this today from the CBC, the big state-funded Canadian broadcasting company, and they had a guy on from some think tank, and he was talking about how these protests have been violent. Now, I've looked for it. I've not really seen. Have these protests been violent that you've seen? What are they talking about with the violence?
The only instance of violence that has really occurred was in the first week when the truckers arrived and some of the homeless people and the residents of the downtown area were taking exception to it. They started to kick over some charcoal grills and things like that. The residents started throwing eggs from on top of the building. That only happened for like a day, maybe two, but that was it. It was nothing on the trucker side that they incited violence or anything like that. They didn't even really participate when that happened, but that easily subsided and there wasn't any issue. And then the real issue of violence had happened when I believe it was 2-3 days ago. Anti-protesters blocked part of the convoy that was trying to relocate to another part. And an anti-protester came in and essentially ripped a flag out of a 13-year-old girl's hands. And her father was like trying to get it back. And that escalated kind of between the two of them. Eventually, the father kind of pushed off the guy, got the flag back, and like took his daughter and went away. But that was pretty much the only incident of violence that was an anti-protester.
Well, no, and we talked about this with Ted Rall, but that 13-year-old girl, one of the things when the Emergency Act went in is they're not going to find people. So what they're saying is not that the person who assaulted this guy's 13-year-old daughter, it's not his problem. The guy whose 13-year-old daughter was there, he would get fined under the Emergency Act. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's essentially illegal to bring your children to the convoy now.
Right. And how is that, whatever the Constitution, the charter up there, how has anyone brought up that seems completely unconstitutional?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I mean, I was talking on Political Misfits today, and Layla they had on, who's a native here, who's been here for years and years and years. And she made a great point. The only thing they've been able to fine and arrest these truckers on have been laws that they have made up for these truckers. So it's been resupplying with fuel, which on its own is not illegal, but because they're part of this convoy, okay, let's write it into law. If you resupply fuel to this convoy, temporarily write it into law, then you can get fined or arrested. It's been, if you bring your children around here, you can get fined or arrested. If you honk your horns, you can get fined or arrested. None of that was on the books before, but these are the only things they're able to arrest them on.
Well, now, again, if I get something wrong here, feel free to correct me. But my understanding of this Emergency Act that Justin Trudeau put through, for him to put it into place, he had to get the approval of the premier of the province, which in this case is former Toronto mayor, but now premier of the province, Doug Ford. Is that essentially correct so far? How am I doing?
I do believe so, yes, because the Emergency Act cannot spread across the entirety of Canada if it is a located issue. So if it is entirely contained within one province, as of right now, he said it's Ontario, then he has to only decree it for Ontario.
So I've got we're about to play the Doug Ford clip, Saul, just so you know. So I've got a clip, and you may have heard it even, but Doug Ford, who's the premier up there, he approved Trudeau putting these emergency actions in. Then I think what happened was there was some polling that came out, and this was not received favorably by Canadian citizens. And so now we have him sort of, if you just heard this clip and you didn't know anything about Doug Ford, you'd think he was like a Rand Paul kind of guy who's been opposed to these mandates and lockdowns and everything else. That's not the case, I don't think. But you heard Doug Ford's press conference today, Austin?
I heard parts of it.
Okay, you probably heard the part we're going to play. This is the abject cowardice part. Let's hear, Saul, let's hear Canadian province premier Doug Ford acting like he's been against the mandates and he's sick of them himself. He almost gets choked up here. Hit it, Saul.
You know, you can go to Costco, you can go to Walmart, you can go shopping. You know, you don't know if the person has a shot beside you or not, but we also know that it doesn't matter if you have 1 shot or 10 shots, you can catch COVID. See, the Prime Minister has triple shots, and I know hundreds of people with 3 shots that caught COVID. We just have to be careful. We've got to always make sure we wash our hands and move forward. But, Colin, we can't stay in this position forever. We got to learn to live with this and get on with our lives. I bet if I asked every single person in this room, do you want these damn masks or do you want them off? They want them off. They want to get back to normal. They want to be able to go for dinner with their families. And there's every single person, including myself, knows people that are unvaccinated. You know, sure, there's the rebel rousers, and then there's just hardworking people that just don't believe in it. And that's their choice. This is about, again, a democracy and freedoms and liberties. And I hate, as a government, telling anyone what to do. We just got to get moving forward and get out of this and protect the jobs. You know, I think a lot of people, Colin, probably yourself too, everyone's done with us. Like, we are done with it. Let's start moving on and cautiously. And, you know, we've followed the rules, all of us, like 90% of us, for over 2 years. The world's done with it. So let's just move forward.
Well, so let's Doug Ford talking about those damn masks, Austin. What's the mood of the people you're talking to in Ottawa, the truckers and so on? What do they think? Are they feeling empathetic with Doug Ford, who's sick of the damn mask? Or is he one of the people who've been doing this to them?
No, absolutely not. It's funny because like Trudeau and Doug Ford and the government in general doesn't even say freedom convoy. They say illegal blockades. And what they say as to why it's so dangerous is because it's shutting down businesses. It's hurting the economy. And so when the truckers hear things like that, they said, how long have we been shutting down businesses for, hurting the economy? 20 days. By the way, open up any of these businesses right next to us. We would love to shop there. We would love to give them support. But the government forcibly closed them down because they blocked off the streets, even while the truckers were keeping 1 lane open on every single road. At the same time, they've been saying, so even if you paint us as shutting down the economy, these small economies in these neighborhoods for 20 days, you've been doing this for 2.5 years when COVID hit. So who really is at fault here? And no, they're not sympathetic towards him at all. And it's funny that he says that he's sick of the masks specifically because, yes, there has been... The damn mask. Yeah, but I don't say that. So, yes, there has been calls to end all vaccine mandates, but barely anyone in the government is saying to end all mask mandates because it seems like, yes, Ottawa, Ontario, Greater Ontario is starting to... They gave out a date to end their vaccine passport system. But no one's really saying anything about masks so far. It seems like that's kind of like the further down the line last step to make, even though the convoy is asking for it. It's funny that that's what the Premier chooses. That's the hill the Premier chooses to die on.
Yes, and so where, I'll ask you the question I asked you before. I know you don't know exactly, but now that these things, what do you think is going to happen when they come to try to send people out of there? Do you think it's going to get ugly, or what do you think is going to happen?
Actually, it's entirely a toss-up for me on if it gets ugly or not. I know that they're not willingly going to exit their vehicles. What I don't know is when the cops either break the windows and pull them out, or if they tow the truck with the drivers in them. I don't know if the drivers are going to fight back or not. So far, when they have been attempted to be arrested before, there's been a lot of deterrence because of the amount of people and eyes that are on the police trying to do that. And also they have just locked themselves in their trucks and said, no, I'm not coming out. And then the police eventually have given up. when they make the move to take out batons, smash open windows, and forcibly pull truckers out, because that's the only thing that's going to happen, or they drop all the mandates. The amount of people we've talked to that says they're going to have to drag me out of my truck, it has been astonishing. So, but at the same time, every day during the live speeches from the stage, they've been preaching, hey, if a cop tries to arrest you, don't fight them, don't resist them. We don't want to give them any fodder to the fire that we are violent or anything like that. So I don't know if they're going to hold to that when push comes to shove. So that part is up in the air.
So let me ask you though, Austin, if they start pulling truckers out of the trucks, where are you going to be? Are you going to try to get footage of that, or what? Do you have a plan for that?
I'm going to be 5 feet away, 10 feet away with a camera and a mic.
There we go. Because what could happen is they could do passive resistance, where they just go limp or something like that. Have they talked about that at all?
No, they have not.
That's what they often do, is this passive resistance where you're just going to go limp and make yourself heavy. You know what I'm talking about? You've seen people do that.
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's fairly effective, and it's not being violent, but it does make the cops' job more difficult. The cops would prefer you just go quietly.
Right.
That's why they often say, come along quietly. But they prefer that. But the other thing that's a big question, and I'll ask you whether you think it's going to happen. This guy from this think tank was saying, even though Trudeau said no military, he said he thinks the military should get involved. This guy is very much in favor of the Emergency Act because he's at a think tank and he's not going to be pulled out of his vehicle. So he was completely in favor of it. Have people down there talked about what they do? I don't know what the Canadian, like, they call their cops the Mounties. Do they have a word for their military people?
Not that I know of. I've heard National Guard, but also Mounties only refers to the federal police. So there's basically a mixture of three police divisions in Ottawa right now. There's the OPP, which is Ottawa Protective Services, or Ottawa Protective Police. And then there's the RCMP, which are the Mounties, which essentially are the FBI. They have jurisdiction all throughout Canada. They just happen to be centralized in Ottawa at the moment and at certain borders. And then there's also the Parliamentary Protective Agency, or it's PPA or PPO, something like that. They're very scarce, but they're basically just standing on the grounds of Parliament, making sure people don't go a little bit further than they should, which hasn't been an issue so far. What's been interesting is prior to today, actually, OPP, after talking with many of them, none of them had any intentions to physically break up this convoy. They had said, hey, you know what? It's super fun here. We get to talk to people. We get to high five people. We get free food and drinks and coffee and all that. And it's great. And we get paid the whole time. And then I asked them, like, okay, so when it all breaks down, will you be the guys breaking it up? They said, no, that'd be the feds. That'd be the federal. That'd be the Mounties. And at the same time, we had the new police chief, Steve Bell, come in, announced as the interim police chief last night, early this morning. And all of a sudden, that whole attitude shifted. And OPP is getting a lot more invested in the convoy than we had previously seen for the last 4 days.
Now, by the way, I got to say this, and I don't want to offend you, Austin, because you wouldn't even say the word damn. But for a lot of us of a certain age, when you talk about OPP, we think of a song by Naughty by Nature and Treach. You know what, Rod, is that what you were thinking every time you said OPP?
Are you talking to me?
Rod? No, I was talking to Rod, because Rod would remember it. So would Saul. Saul, you know what OPP stands for.
Yeah, we can't really say it or not.
Right, can't. So don't, Austin, don't look it up.
Yeah. You guys can't say it, but Lee, let me ask you, do you know what WAP means?
Yes, I do. And so OPP was our generation's.
Wings and pizza.
Right, it was our generation's WAP.
Gotcha.
So I'm just saying. So you know, it wouldn't be fun though. Go up to a trucker as he's being pulled out of his truck and just say, "You down with OPP?" and see what he says. It probably wouldn't be that fun actually, because he'd be busy being arrested. But have people talked about, Are people nervous, do you think, that the National Guard might get involved?
Austin woke up for a second. He's back.
Yeah, back.
Wait. Hey, Austin, welcome back. So are
Hey,
people
sorry.
nervous about the idea that the National Guard might get involved?
No, because to them, it's the exact... I've asked them, like, hey, are you worried? Are you scared at various different intervals? And they just laugh in my face. I mean, do they realize that if the National Guard gets involved and that physically brings an end to it? Yes. Are they scared of that? No. They know that they're making a stance. They're making a statement to the rest of the world and to their fellow Canadians. And they don't really care how it ends for them. I mean, the majority of people that we've talked to have all been like, it's not for me. It's for my kids. It's for their kids. It's for the generations to come, about fighting tyranny and fighting against illegal mandates and all that. And they are true believers now that they are 3 weeks in. So,
Well, no, and we were talking with Ted Rall before also about how cowardly. Have people talked to you down there about how cowardly the American banks were turning over their own customers to the Canadians?
No, I heard of it, but I didn't hear the take of cowardly banks.
Yeah, because that's one thing that should be an issue to everybody, is that these banks were helping out Canadians as they try to freeze. You know, one of the things I saw is that people could face fines if they give food to people. And again, you know, has anyone come down who are lawyers to help the truckers? Have you seen any lawyers on the streets of Ottawa there?
Well, you know, they're not as many, or I haven't talked to any lawyers on the streets, but I know that the entire convoy has a massive legal team, to where if you take a picture of any fines that you get, you send it to them or you tweet it at them or something, and the lawyers will take care of it completely. They have a ton of legal support as well, which is why they feel so justified as to, hey, we're not breaking any laws. Let's keep it civil. Let's not do anything violent. And that's why they feel so justified being there for so long.
And how many other, let me ask you this too, because there's one thing that's always interesting whenever you cover big news events. How much mainstream media is there and how much indie media? Are you aware of a big media presence? Do they have the satellite trucks out or not so much?
It's funny. I've seen two mainstream media networks. One has been CBC, which is the Canadian one, and then Fox News, and that's pretty much it. I've seen a ton of independent media. A lot of people are walking around with gimbals and all that. So, but they're not major network associated. So yeah, it's funny. You talk to the people and you say your media, and they say, "Well, which media?" And they say, "Well, you know, Fox is doing all right, but like CNN, MSNBC, NPR, they report from their cushy towers in New York," as they say.
Well, and the final question I got for you again, Austin Pelly from Fault Lines with Thomas and Pelly. Great job, Austin. Thanks again for being on. Were people very emotional today after the Russian invasion of Ukraine? Is that an effect that you saw in the streets of people crying?
They were crying on the streets. They were praying to Putin to relax because, you know, they've never seen an invasion like this ever in their life. It was a very special day.
There we go. Austin Pelly, thanks so much for joining us. Have fun up there. Try not to get dragged out of a truck while you're up there, and especially by the OPP. You know me. There we go. Austin Pelly. Great appearance as usual. Ted Rall. Always fun to talk to Ted. Thanks to everybody who called in. We'll be back tomorrow on the best damn radio show in the world. It's The Backstory.